we're going to go over Litigation Companion and Best Authority. So Litigation Companion and Best Authority work hand in hand. The Litigation Companion piece that we're seeing right here under this check group, this is really a proofreading function to allow you to go through the document, make sure that everything is as it should be, and it allows you to proofread it within a task pane as opposed to reading top to bottom, left to right, over and over and over again. And we can recognize authorities and citations in the proofread piece. And we can make minor changes to it, typically in the active document itself. But if you need to make drastic changes to the citations, or you're doing checking on that, and then you need to build a table of authorities, that's when we're going to pivot over to the best authority function in its own ribbon tab here. So we'll start with proofread. Notice I've got two buttons up here. One of them is proofread, one of them is highlight authorities. Proofread is really the bread and butter. It's going to launch the task pane, and we'll see it appear on the right. Highlight authorities is a toggle. And if I toggle this on, you can see it's been depressed. We will see anything that has been inserted as a citation or authority within this pleading. Okay, so come back over to the Litera tab, and I'm going to highlight authorities. And so when I scroll down, we should see some highlighted items that are recognized as either a short form or a long form citation. We can find any other citations that are potential authorities in here, and it will let us know if there's any problems with them. So that's all that highlight authorities does. It literally just highlights those guys within the document. And again, it's a toggle. It's not really making any changes to the document. It's a visual aid so that you can see them directly. Now, with that, we can run the proofread functionality, and we can leave the toggle on. Again, it's just an aid. It's not making any real changes here, but the proofread, this is where we're actually going to see the items in their respective subcategories in the task pane itself. Before I go clicking into any of these categories, I just want to call out some of the icons that we see here first and foremost. So we see a flag. It says there's 0 of them in this document, which is fine, but flags are actually placed by a user for other users. It's a collaboration tool. So say that an assistant is working with an attorney and they're doing the initial proofread of the document, and they find an item in it and they're not sure what how to correct this particular item, whatever the category may be. Well, you can use a flag. So you can choose that item, insert a flag, and save the document, and then send it to whoever it is that you're collaborating with. And when they run proofread, they will see the flag in it. So flags are actually inserted into the document via hidden bookmark, and they will travel with the document. If you happen to be collaborating with somebody outside the firm and you've got a metadata solution in place that will scrub your documents, chances are those flags are going to get blown away. So you might need to use something like a subject tag or whatever method you have within your email to keep those in place. But just something to note. Internally, typically they'll stay. The metadata isn't usually going to scrub things for internal recipients, but just something to note. If you ever run proofread and you see a flag in this risk assessment group up at the top here, just rest assured that you are not the first Litigation Companion user to be proofing this document. The next item we have is a red exclamation point. It says it's an attention item, which it is, but really these are your risks or your potential risks that we are seeing in the document. And this could span many different subcategories of items within the document. But if you see a red exclamation point, it's a good place to start. Yellow exclamation points that we see here under editing mistakes and references, these are informational items. So maybe not necessarily something that's going to be bringing in risk to the document, but something that should be addressed regardless. Things like inconsistent capitalization or spacing. And there's lots of different items that will just be called out to say, hey, this might not be 100% accurate. Just check it for accuracy. Now notice we also have the ability to filter certain items out. And if a filter is applied and it happens to be filtering out an item that would be indicated by red, we won't filter it out 100%. It will still show up in the risk group just to make sure that we're not missing anything. Now, all of these tiles that we see here are clickable, and they will take you into a new window. And the risk assessment group is its own clickable tile as well. And this will give you all of your risks or flagged items regardless of the category. So if you're on a time crunch and you just really want to make sure you're knocking out all the risks without having to go through each and every item individually, you can come up here, click on risk assessment, and you can see all of our different categories that these are associated with. They don't really have anything to do with each other, but we can see all of our risks here regardless. And that's one of the beautiful things about Litigation Companion is it doesn't hold you to a specific workflow. If you want to come here and knock out the risks, so be it. If you want to go through it granularly and do each individual category, you can do that as well. Ultimately, the end result is going to be the same. So whatever approach suits you best is the way you can leverage the product. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and click on name states because it's the first one. Oh, and also you can drag and drop these into any order that suits you best. They'll remain sticky until you move them again. So if you know that all you're going to want to do is look at citations first, you can bring that up to the front and it will just stay there. I usually just like to leave this one at the end, but names and dates. So I'm not going to go through every item here. We've got some content to go over today, but the Litigation Companion task pane is very, very easy to use. It's very intuitive, and regardless of which category you're in, the workflow is ultimately the same. So what you're going to do is you're going to come into a category like this, and you can see we've got some info here. We can see that my risks are actually categorized first, so we could see them. This is an option. There's a little ellipses right here, this little hamburger menu, whatever you want to call it. This is our more options dialog, and always sort risks first is checked by default. You can change this if you want it to be sort by document order, that's fine, but we usually put the risks at the top. There's two other items down here, clear flagged and reviewed items and remove comments from items. Remember I mentioned you can insert a flag and that's essentially a hidden bookmark. At the end of your proofread, typically it's a best practice to remove these hidden bookmarks because heaven forbid opposing counsel also has Litigation Companion and then, you know, the metadata scrubber isn't working and you send it off to them and all of a sudden they have flags on each of the items that you've been addressing and you don't want to give them a leg up, right? So best practice when you're done is to come here and clear these flagged and reviewed items. We also have the ability to insert comments into the document, which I'll show an example of as well. And just like the flags, it's a good idea to remove them when you're done with your proofread. So we've got this big list of names, dates, etc. So I'm just going to click on this top one here, and it's going to expand a little bit. And it's going to tell me exactly why it considered this particular item a risk. So this is calling out Acme Film Productions LLC. And it says that we should flip the MC to a CM. So it's a misspelling. It's saying AMC, right? And it's cool because this is a name of a company. It's not really part of a database. It's not something you could just pull up in a dictionary and say, oh yeah, that's wrong, right? It's a name. And the way that we can see that this is in the document incorrectly is if we've got other Acmes down here, and the software's thinking, hey, we see it used this way multiple times, and in this one scenario, it's misspelled. So we should likely change this. Now, notice all that I have in this task pane is this big blue ignore button. And I'll talk about ignore in just a minute, but there's no automatic fix for this. Because what if it was AMC? You know, we're just calling it out to say, we think that you mean Acme because it's been used elsewhere. So there's no like button to fix this. I'm just going to change this in the document itself. And notice my cursor's still over here. I'm not doing anything with the task pane, but the task pane is going to recognize that I made a change in the document, and it's automatically going to update and remove that risk from my list. Now it's still here in the list. Now it's here under Acme Film Productions LLC. I can click on it and it says, hey, just review this company name for accuracy. Is it as it should be? And it looks pretty good. This one's used twice, and this is the offending item I actually fixed. So I'm on this particular item and it's not calling out a risk. It's just calling it out for review, and I know that this is correct and I just fixed it. So I can just click the little checkbox and click on reviewed down here at the bottom, and it's gonna put it into a grayed out state. So now it's no longer in my list at the top. I don't have to worry about it. And earlier I had mentioned in the options menu the ability to clear flagged and reviewed items. Well, this is considered a reviewed item. It's also inserted via a hidden bookmark, so it's really the same kind of functionality going on here. And this is just a very handy tool to have as the proofreader to make sure that you're not redoing the work over again. So maybe you started your proofread on a Friday afternoon and it's 4:30 and you just wanted to knock out as much as you could before you went home, and then you come back Monday morning and you had saved your document and you run the proofread, and any item that you had marked as reviewed will be grayed out, so you don't have to worry about doing the same work over and over again. It's just as a placeholder to make sure that you have in fact addressed all the issues. So let's take a look at the next item here. We're under the names, dates, etc. category. So let's take a look at a date. So it's saying Monday, July 16, 2005, and it's a risk. It's a red exclamation point. And the software is telling me that the correct day of the week for July 16th, 2005 was actually a Saturday and not a Monday. So unless you were some sort of savant that had calendars memorized for the past decade or so, this would be a tough item to just pick up and recognize as, oh yeah, that's just wrong. So just like the other item before it, all that we have in here is this big ignore button. We need to make the change within the active document. We don't know if it's the day, the month, the year that's the offending item here. So you as the proofreader need to do a little digging to find out exactly what it should be. So, I know that not a lot of work is done on Saturdays. So let's just say that this is actually supposed to be the 18th. Oops. I did not want to do that. And want to delete the 6, make that an 8. Okay, so it was supposed to be the 18th. And this, just like the other item before it, will update on its own, and it has removed itself from the task pane. Now, the next item we have here is an address, and it's doing the same sort of check as we did for the date. So here is an address, and it's telling me that the correct city name for zip code 60112 is Cortland, not Lombard. So either the zip code is wrong, or the city is wrong. We're not sure. Illinois is correct. It would tell us if it was not Illinois, but I'll just go ahead and change this to Cortland, and this should resolve itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at city names, state names, and zip codes and make sure that they are all correct. Oops, I put Cortland, not Cortland. There we go. All right, so the rest of the items that we have here, these are strictly for review. There might be some situations where you come across an item like this, 3/8/2018. It says, hey, use a different date format to avoid confusing the day, month, or year. So you can navigate to each time that this has been used, and to see this visually within the footer here. And if you want to make a change, you can, but you don't need to. It's just bringing it to your attention. Anytime you see a person's name, it will come up for review for accuracy, but let's just assume that these are in good shape. I don't have any more risks. Let's move on to the next category. So I'll bring editing mistakes towards the end. We'll do that one later. Let's look at references. So in this document, I've got some typed references. I've got some federal statutes. I've got some state cases and another typed item here that was actually under review. I'm going to remove this reviewed because I haven't looked at this. I'm going to put this back on the to-do list. So I'm going to check this item and I'm going to click to do, and it's just going to put it back in my list. So it's definitely a typed reference. So when I click on this, Word splits into a split view, and I've got a couple buttons in the task pane itself. The split view is kind of nice because what it's doing is it's finding the numbered item, which is A right here. This is part of a numbering scheme. And in the bottom, it's showing us the potential cross-reference, and it's asking us, do we want to assign it to this letter A right here? So you're essentially proofing to make sure that Exhibit A is in fact supposed to be pointing to this. If it is, you can simply click the Assign button. But notice that this has been used 10 times. So I'm going to use these little arrow keys right here, and I'm going to navigate to each time Exhibit A has been referenced. So I can use this to find my potential cross-references in the bottom 3/4 of Word, but the top quarter of Word will always show my destination for that numbering or that numbered item, that cross-reference. So it's very, very handy. So I can keep this in view, make sure that this is in fact supposed to be talking about Exhibit A, and I can navigate to each one, and I can assign them individually, or I can assign all of them. Once I go through and I see, yep, all of these are on the level, I'm just going to assign all. And it should have assigned them all by now. I don't know what's happening. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you can see I now have a clickable link here. And just to show really quickly, if I happen to toggle my field codes, and let me just toggle them this way. Toggle field codes. You can see there's a standard ref codes. This is what Word uses to insert a cross-reference. And it does reference Contract Companion, Litigation Companion, same thing. But this is more of an indicator of where this reference came from. Ultimately, this works as a standard ref code. And what does that mean to you? That means that, let's say that you send this document elsewhere and it doesn't have Litigation Companion installed, and somebody goes in and makes a change to the document. Maybe they add an additional section which throws your numbering, to a different order. So maybe now this is pointing to Exhibit B, right? Because you added another exhibit or something like that. Well, all you need to do is in Word, come here and update your fields. And you don't need to have Litera installed here because Word will update fields regardless. And since we're leveraging native Word field codes, it will exist and continue to work as if Litera's Litigation Companion was never involved. So it just makes it a very flexible tool. You don't have to worry about any proprietary anything, regardless of where you send it. So we took a look at that, and anything to do with numbering, like references, cross-references, stuff like that, it never removes itself from the task pane. And I'll show you why. If by chance I needed to make a change, let's say I came through this 40, Exhibit B, 40B here, and I assigned all of them. And I go, oh, you know what? I didn't really want to assign all of those. I wanted to switch another one to an Exhibit C, right? So I can find the offending item. Let's just say it's this one right here. And I wanted to make this one C. I can come down here, choose C. It will move the top to reflect that destination for the cross-reference. And then I can assign it right here, just this one off. This one was supposed to be Exhibit C, okay? But the rest were supposed to be B. So this is just an example of, maybe I needed to go back to this one, even though I linked them all, but I needed to change it. This little drop down here, all that this is a tree view of the numbering scheme in the document. So if you need to link a cross-reference to a different numbered item, you could just find it in here and link it. And this is leaps and bounds faster than doing this unaided in Word. So very, very helpful tool when checking your cross-references. And then if I needed to go through and link all of the items, I can check the checkbox associated with it, and I can come down here to assign, and I can assign multiple cross-references in one fell swoop. So maybe I've gone through it and I know that all my typed references are in fact pointing to the right place, but I don't want to go through and individually assign them. Just check the boxes and click assign at the bottom. It will link them all. All right,
Brett,
so
I have couple questions. So my toolbar looks a little different than yours. I don't have the check button. I got to where you are by checking on the analyze button.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same button. Depending on the installation, it might have some different naming conventions. So if it was installed as check, it's going to say analyze.
Okay.
It's all same functionality though.
I didn't see the highlight authorities button though. I've been looking for that.
Yeah, highlight authorities is only going to show up if it's installed as Litigation Companion.
Okay.
So I can work with Tom to make sure that we get the right layout for you. But yeah, if yours says analyze, it might say something along the lines of well, do you have a proofread button next to it?
Yes.
So if you press the proofread button, it should expand some more functionality right here.
Yep.
Do you have highlight authorities in there?
I don't.
You have
I have TOA, define term checker, final checks, and mark incomplete.
Okay, so mark incomplete is a drop down. It looks like this.
Yeah.
That allows you to insert formatting so that we can see it as an incomplete item or, maybe a placeholder. Or you could just do those manually. But yeah, it sounds like right now Litera check is installed as Litera check, which is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, if you prefer, I can actually I can reinstall this as Litera check and show you that, but you still won't get the highlight authorities in the same manner because it's going to have it's just got that proofread with defined terms and things like that in it. But if you install it as Litigation Companion, you'll get this.
Okay. That makes sense. Just one other question. Can you show me again how to clear all flags?
Yeah. So I don't have a flag in here. Let me put a flag in here. Let's say Jane Doe is a placeholder. And so I have these selected right here, and I'm just going to click flag. And the flag immediately gets placed in here. If I ever want to remove flags, I would come to this little ellipses here, this little hamburger menu, and I can clear flagged and reviewed items.
There it is. Okay.
So that's a best practice to do at the end of your proofread. Okay, so we've got a couple other categories here, but for the most part, regardless of what we're clicking on, the workflow is going to be the same. And I do want to talk about ignore really quick. I don't think we're going to see ignore on this one. Yeah, we won't. Let's talk about ignore very, very briefly. You might see, oh, Acme Film Productions, it's fine. I just want to click ignore. Okay. Ignore will essentially put this item into a permanent reviewed state. So even if I had a different document 6 months from now, and I ran proofread or analyze on it, and Acme Film Productions was in that document, if I had ever ignored it, it's going to be ignored in this document too, even though the documents might not be at all, related. So exercise caution when leveraging ignore, because it's not going to affect just this document. It's affecting your computer. There are use cases for ignore, maybe your name, right? Maybe you don't need to see your name show up a bunch of times. And as long as your name is spelled correctly, and we recognize that, we can just ignore it. We just won't show it in the task pane or your firm name or whatever it may be. There are some use cases for it, but don't just go down the list clicking ignore, because it could get you into trouble later. So I clicked on the settings button here. It just showed up on the wrong screen. So I'm going to bring it up here. But if I need to remove an ignore property, I could find its respective category. So that was names, dates, and it was just person's name, right? I think it was Jane Doe, right? I thought it was under names. Let me go back in there. Oh, Acme, that's what it was. I didn't ignore Jane Doe. I flagged her. Okay, so here we have Acme Film Productions, and I have it as ignored, right? So I can just delete that property. We'll no longer ignore that. Looks like we have big law firm inserted in here as a recognized term because it's not an official title, but somebody wanted to recognize it. So you can come in here and make a new term and say, I want Dewey Cheatham and Howe to be recognized, and I can always have that recognized. Just an example there. Out of the box, not a lot of anything really needs to be done within settings here. It's really just in case you're working with a small firm and you want to make sure that they're being picked up in one way, shape, or form. Okay, so citation issues. Really, in Litigation Companion, other than recognition of a potential problem, there's not a lot that can be done in here. You can conform, using the conform button here. If we find, like for this particular example is inconsistent capitalization, it found it all caps here, lower caps here, and I can choose what I want it to be, and I can say, you know what, let's have it all conform to all caps. It will recognize orphan short form table or citations. It will recognize if there's a short form without a long form, which is orphan, or if there's some sort of error within it, maybe spacing. But there's not a lot that can be done to the citations directly in this task pane, especially when it comes to putting together a table of authorities, which is really where we want to ultimately get to. But anything within this task pane is more from a proofreading perspective, and you can treat it as such. It's very, very helpful in getting through a long document very quickly because it will put all of those like items together so you can see them in mass and then make that change, whether you need to link cross references or whatever it may be. This numbering issue here is saying we have a repeated number, and you can see that right here. It goes from number 2 to number 2. So it's just saying it's being repeated. So this part, this number 2 right here, it appears to be typed. It's not even part of the numbering scheme. So you would need to take action within the document itself to get this as part of the scheme and then continue your numbering here. Here we have some missing punctuation. We will find things like closing brackets without opening brackets and vice versa. Here we have an opening quote, not a closing quote, but they do have one here. Oh, you know what? This is a curly quote and this is a straight quote, so it's not being picked up. So you just need to make those changes to it. So we'll take this one and we'll delete it here. And we'll delete this extraneous parentheses. What is this one here? Father's promise. Okay, it's apostrophe. That's fine. Some more missing punctuation, multiple items. And then here we have 2 spaces are used more often at the end of a sentence. Add another space. And you can navigate through using your arrow keys and say, all right, well, if 2 spaces are used more often and we have a couple examples where there's a single space, we'll just fix all of them just for consistency's case. And again, these aren't anything too out of the ordinary, right? And it's not going to get the document thrown out, but it's not a good look to have these sorts of mistakes in there. We do have like incomplete items. These are those placeholders that we have mark with. So you can say mark an item with a bullet or highlighted text or colored text or bracketed text. Let's say this is bracketed, and that bracketed text will show up as a potential placeholder and something that maybe we need to replace, So we have Jane Doe as a placeholder that needs to be filled. I could come in here and change this to whatever name it needs to be. We will also recognize blank underlines, maybe signature lines, any bracketed text, highlighted text. It will all show up as a potential incomplete item for you to make your change in. I'm going to turn off highlight authorities. It's not actual highlighting as in like applied to the document. Inconsistent phrases can be helpful. This shows you ways, that the language might be modified to be more consistent throughout. So here it's saying authorize, allow, or, but we're seeing that authorize, permit, or has been used 3 times, and maybe we should make this consistent, as it's used 3 times and only once for allow. So it's just giving you recommendations, not necessarily making sure that everything is, correct. We don't do any sort of real spelling check except for things like names or locations, something that has already been listed in the document multiple times, because that would be double dipping into what Word already does, like spelling, grammar, stuff like that. We don't really look at, but we do look at punctuation, spacing, and then proper names. Again, like common terms, this is strictly for review. You'll never see a red or yellow indicator in here. It's just saying, hey, review this for accuracy. Is this as intended? You've used plaintiff 33 times. Do you want to verify that each one is as it should be? So on and so forth. I know a lot of people that really just focus on the risk areas of the document and move on to the next. And I know some people that go through each and every item and mark every item as reviewed as they go through. And then when they're done and they're 100% sure that this document is now bulletproof, then they'll go through and clear their flags and comments. Speaking of comments, let's say that you are working with somebody that doesn't have Litigation Companion installed, but you want to bring something to their attention. Just like we would for the flag, just select the items that you want to mark with a comment. And instead of clicking the flag button here, we're going to click this little chat bubble down here. I've been asking development to make this a Word comment button right here. We have the real estate. But if I click this, we will see Word comments insert, and they will be inserted at every place that these items have been used. So these are all at the top, but you can see it's giving me the same information as the task pane. It's got my author information inserted by Litigation Companion. It's under a company category, and that we should be reviewing this name for accuracy. And if it was a risk, it would tell us what the risk is, so on and so forth. And that way you could save the document, send it to whoever you're working with, and you can then have them address it in whatever way they need to. You can always come back here and you can remove comments from all items, and it will only remove the comments that were inserted by Litigation Companion. It will leave alone any that you went in and just inserted via Word. And lastly, let's just talk about filters really quick. I had mentioned that if you have a filter applied, it won't filter out the risks. They'll still show up under the risk assessment group. But let's say under references here, I didn't have any of my, federal statutes, to look at. I'm not concerned about it. So I can click on the category button right here, so I can pull all of my like subcategories together. So here's all my federal statutes. There's some state cases in here. So let's just say that I don't care about these statutes. I'm going to filter them out. So I can just come to federal statute and filter it out. And let's do state too, because I just don't care to look right now. Okay. And so now all I have is my references. And you can see there's still 0 risks being filtered, but I can see that references do have a filter applied. Now those filters are sticky. They will stay filtering until you turn them off. But I just wanted you to be aware that you always have the little filter option up at the top, and you can toggle these on as you see fit or off, and that will allow you to focus more on what matters to you in your particular proofread. I do think that the proofread task pane here is probably one of the most intuitive and easiest to use solutions from Litera. But if you run into questions or you're having some strange behavior, by all means, reach out. I will be happy to assist you with it. So let's talk about best authority. Go ahead.
Sorry, can we go back to citation issues?
Yeah.
I seem to remember in the demo a while back that if we had a case with a typo in the site, that it was connected to Fastcase. Is that right? And it could catch that?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay.
I don't actually have one in here, unfortunately, a typo.
And that's fine, but I think for like the next training, which we'll need, I think that would be really helpful for the group to see.
Yeah, and I can show that in the best authority piece too, because the best authority has a bunch of test documents in it, and I could probably just open up that document with that and see those typos there.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to actually open up a new document straight from there. Maybe there might be a typo in this one. Let's see. Oh, no, this one doesn't have any citation issues. Okay. So I'm just going to do Control N, have a new document here. And if you come to Best Authority and you have a blank document, this is what you're going to see. This is not the typical Best Authority ribbon. This is when you have nothing in the document at all, just blank. So what I'm going to do is open a training document. And I want Best Authority Sample 101 Premium. This is going to be the go-to for most training for Best Authority. And now we have the true Best Authority ribbon for starting a scan, and this is going to change again once we get into the scan. So this document is in pretty good shape. It's got a TOC, it's got a numbering scheme, it's got a bunch of citations and authorities in it. So with this open, let's take a look in Proofread just really quickly. Let's see what we come up with, because I'm sure there's some issues in here. Okay, citation issues, we got a bunch. Well, not a bunch, but we can see orphan short form. This short form citation is not corresponding to the full citation. Same with this one here. So you can see that we're able to find some things within the citation checker here. If there was a inconsistency with regard to spelling, it would work in the same way that it would for, names, days, when it found that item that didn't match what it did in another section of the document. Be the same sort of thing. But what we're really going to see in the Best Authority piece here is how much more verbose it is in finding issues with your citations. So when I open Best Authority and I want to put together a table of authority, the first thing I want to do is I want to scan the document. Oops, I manage. So the startup flag right here is where I want to start. And typically I'll just want to click the top half of the button. It is a drop down, but the top half is just going to take me through these steps instead of having to do it with multiple clicks. So I'm just going to click the flag. And the first thing that we see is a dialog asking us to select a scheme. This is the scheme that's going to control how your table of authorities looks and what's included into it. Are you using PASM? Do you want, to exclude citations that are quoted, things like that? Where do you want the font to come from? So I have sample common selected, but I'm actually going to choose sample California because this is a California document and I just want to keep it that way. So I can go ahead and click OK. And the next thing I'm going to get is a dialog asking me where I want to set my scan range. Of course, I could just scan the entire dang document, but there's a lot of content at the beginning and at the end of the document that we know is not going to include any citations and maybe could be read as such, especially in a TOC. Sometimes you get the V in there and it doesn't want to, it would erroneously pick a table of contents entry as a potential citation. So we don't want to do that. We want to set the scan range. And the software is going to automatically kind of scan the document and look and say, where do you want to put it? They already put it right here. And before that is just my TOC. So yeah, that's a good place to start. My cursor is right here. I can go ahead and click set. And now it put my cursor right down here. But let's say we'll put it right here at the beginning conclusion because we're not going to have anything below this. And I'm going to click set here. So now the software is only going to scan between that beginning and ending scan range. And from here, we get our Best Authority dialog and we're ready to scan the document, but I need to choose what state this is for. So obviously this is a California document. I'm going to choose California. If I choose none, that's the same as a federal document. So if it's a federal pleading, then you'll just leave it as none and it will default to the federal abbreviations. So I want California. And I'm going to simply click scan and review at this point. I don't need to change anything else. There are some options that are available for you here. Pretty straightforward, but there's 3 options at the bottom, which is scan, scan and review, scan and build. So we know already that we need to scan the document. And as soon as you scan the document, you should review it. So typically what you're going to want to do is go to scan and review. There's a couple of options here, but I'm going to do page numbers highlighting, which is the default, and I'm going to click scan and review. So it's scanning between those 2 areas of the document. looking for authorities, citations, and groups. And we get this little dialog after our scan is complete, and it says we found 5 different groups with 58 authorities and 90 citations. And 3 of the citations have been quoted, which we are suppressing those because of the option of the TOA scheme that we selected. We could always go back and make changes to this before we insert the TOA, but this is just letting us know what we found based on what we asked it to find. Okay, so it automatically brings us into review because we click scan and review. If I hadn't clicked scan and review, it would have simply done scan, and it wouldn't have brought me into the review group up here that allows me to actually make changes. So as I very quickly scroll through, you can see there's all sorts of colors going on here, and it doesn't really tell us exactly what all of that really means. So I can default up to my legend up here, very helpful. And it showed up on the wrong screen. Let me drag it up here. So I'm just going to pin it to the top. All of these colors that we see that have been highlighted are all customizable to whatever suits you best, and they will just stay in that method, until you change it. But out of the box, yellow is considered a long form citation. Cyan is short form. Gray is hidden or suppressed. Reds are suspects, which is typically something that has some sort of issue with it, error in it. And then the purple, or whatever this may be, is a non-TOA reference. So any other reference that isn't necessarily referring to the TOA will just get called out. So as I click on any of these items, you'll notice that in my navigation pane, it's going to highlight the item that coincides with it. So I'm just going to start with the top, and we'll come up here to Binder and Aetna and verify that everything is as it should be. And it looks good. I don't see any issues with it. Notice as I click on it, the highlighting will reverse. So we'll get the color of the text to be the color reflected in the legend. It's just showing that if it's black and the words are the color, then that's actually selected at this time. So I can come through my list, take a look at these, and they look like they're in pretty good shape. If I needed to make a change to something, I could absolutely do so and make a change either within the document itself or within just the content that's going into the citation. I'm going to close cases, and I'm going to come back down here to suspects and look at some of the suspects. These are the red ones, the ones that are saying that there's an error with it, right? So commercial enterprise clause, okay, I'm not really concerned about that. But let's take a look here at Aguilar versus Atlantic Co. So this one is interesting. We could see here that this should all be one citation, right? But what's happening is the co is not in italics like the rest of the content here. So I could do this a couple different ways. I could just do it within Word here. And when I do that, what's going to happen is we should see it get modified with a little M in here showing that I changed it in Word. I might have to rescan it. So yeah, when I rescan this, we'll see that this was modified in the left here, but basically it saw this as 2 potential citations that were not getting picked up because it was missing some of the formatting. Here we have Hunter v. Pacific Mechanical Corp. Clearly a triable issues, and then it continues on with the court information. So this should all be considered one citation, right? But with these words in here, it's not getting picked up properly, and it's not going to be pulled into the table of authorities properly. So what I can do now is I can select all the text I actually want to select, including this stuff in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I can either right click or I can come up here to mark citations or just mark. And I want to mark this as a long authority. Okay, so we get the best authority dialog box here, and we are handling just this one authority. So notice right now it's saying, hey, something's wrong with this. It's giving me red error. I don't know what type of authority this is. Well, yeah, we've got this text in the middle here, which shouldn't be a part of the authority. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to delete what I don't need. Okay. So now, as soon as I deleted that, it goes, oh, that's actually a case. Cool. One thing I want to mention is this auto format button. This is very helpful, and it will help get the citation or authority into the correct format for this specific document. So if I click this, watch these dates here, or this date here, along with the court number here, auto format. So just remove that last one that was unnecessary. So I can go ahead and click OK. Now notice, now it says that all of this has been selected and we're recognizing it now as a long form citation, but this is not going to get pulled into the TOA because we deleted it from the citation field in that little dialog box. So we're still treating this all as one, but when it gets pulled into the TOA, this clearly a triable issue comma will be not included. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Come back down. I'm going to collapse all of this so I can just look at my suspects. Oh, yeah, that one should get. Oh, this all needs to be. No, I think just this needs to be italicized. So when we rescan this, this should come up. What else do we have? Terms of this clause, these are ambiguous, so don't really need to worry about these too much. Okay. So let's say that I went through and I scanned everything and I made all my changes. I'm going to close review. And it says, hey, one of the following changes was made to the document. Would you like to run a rescan? Remember, I made that change within Word. This is why, because I made the change within Word. I didn't do it within the dialog box like I did for the other citation or that other authority. Either way that you do it is fine, but it just wants to rescan now. So I'm going to do all the same I did before. California, I didn't make any changes there. I'm just going to scan and review. Let it recognize the change that I made. Because while we're actually reviewing the document and making changes within that document, it's not actually making changes to the actual document until we apply it. So that's why we needed to rescan it. So I could see where my changes have been made, one authority, 4 citations, and they're all, correlate to one another. But I can see that this has all been recognized now as a citation itself because we have the proper formatting for this code. So whether you do it within Word, whether you do it within the mark button up here, makes no difference. I kind of like actually doing it within the mark, and you could do this via right click too. You can see I've got this entire menu. If I came to mark, I need to select it. Sorry about that. So if I have this selected and I right click, go to mark, long citation, it's the same thing. And I could make whatever change I needed in here. Cancel that. Okay, so let's assume that I'm happy with this and I can close review. Okay, so now I can do a couple things. I can build the TOA, or I can link my web links to it. So we have the hypercase web links functionality, and what this does is this allows you to have links to things like Fastcase or case text, or if you happen to have Westlaw or Lexis, you can do it there. There's a little bit extra work for West and Lexis. Do you guys have West or Lexis?
We have both, I think.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I will show you how to get hyperlinks from West and Lexis then, because if you didn't have it, I wouldn't go over it, but we'll go over it. So I'm going to click on the web links button, and it's going to bring us back into review. You can do this while you're in review. While we were in that review group, you can click, I believe the web links button was over here. It doesn't really matter what order you do it in, whenever you're happy. So here you can see we've got our same review panel like we did before. And we have 49 missing hyperlinks and 7 have been excluded. And that was those quoted ones, things like that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get links using autofill if and at all possible. So this is going to give us the option to use something like fast case, case text, and docket alarm. So let's do fast case first. And I just want to do any items without links. And so I'm going to click get links from selected provider. So it's now scouring the web from fast case, and it's looking for any hyperlinks to apply into the document that correlate with that particular case. Now, I know that the fast case and the case text, they have very similar results. So I'm not going to do both of those, but fast case isn't going to find all of them. Okay, it's going to have some of them. And I know that some of the providers kind of specialize in different areas of law and what they might have on file. So we have the option to do items without links, all items, or any selected items specifically that we're looking for. But typically I'll start with something like fast case, and it says, oh, good, it found 21 out of my 49 requested links. So I still have 28 that are missing. And I could just come down to case text and do items without links and let it scan it again, but it's not going to find anything. So in this situation, maybe I can leverage Westlaw or Lexis. Now, I don't have either of these, but I can show you what you need to do. So what you want to do is come to offline research and review. What this does is it creates a document, a links document. So let's say I want all the items that don't have links, and I'm simply going to create a links document, and we'll call it Best Story Sample 101 Premium Links. Okay. So now it makes this document, the Hypercase Web Link Research Document. And it's got all of the different case citations here. And then they've got these empty brackets. So what you do is you follow the instructions on this. You go to Westlaw or Lexis, whatever it may be, and you upload this document that includes all of these to West. And they will provide back a version of this document, and within these brackets will be the link. So you save that back locally from their website, and then you come back in here to import URLs from links document. Okay, and you click this, you browse to it, find it. I don't have one here because I don't have West. And it would take all of those links that West provided to you, and it would populate them into your document. Then we can go ahead and close web links. And now I want to build my TOA. So from here, it's going to say, do you want to have just a table of authorities, just points of authorities, or standard TOA and points of authority? So I'm just going to do TOA right here. You could filter out if you didn't want some items included, like maybe you didn't want other authorities or court rules in there. You just wanted cases, constitutions, and statutes. You can select that. You can, I can't do anything here because I don't have points of authorities selected, but if I did, then I could toggle these on and off. And then lastly, at the bottom, apply web links to TOA entries. If you don't select this guy right here, then the links that we just imported from West and from Fastcase, they would only be in the document itself. So you would have to click on it, and it would then navigate you to that point on the web. I want to actually add them to my TOA, so I could just click on it on the TOA. We'll go ahead and click build. And it's going to ask you where we want it. So it knows like this is a blank spot and it's likely for the TOA because it's right after the TOC. So it defaulted there. I'll just go ahead and click set. You could of course move it to wherever you'd like. Okay, and now my build is complete. And I included those web links. So when I click on these, it's actually going to open up that link to that case. So I can review that case information, make sure that it is in fact valid to what I wanted to link it to. And yeah, that's the best authority workflow from a user perspective. Of course, there's a lot of functionality in here for things like admins if they wanted to specify specific libraries or make custom schemes specific to the firm. I have a handful of firms doing that, but really Best Authority works really well right out of the box without any, out of the ordinary configuration. So I think that you'll be all right with it. But if you wanted to make changes as an administrator, there are certainly some more features you can drill down into. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know that we're at time. We can certainly put together another session if you'd like, and if you happen to do a different sort of installation, like as the Litera check, so you have a different ribbon, we can go over that as well. But I'd be happy to address any questions that you have, and we can go over whatever whatever you need to get you comfortable with this.
Yeah, could you show me how to suppress the site?
What do you want to suppress? Like a
just
citation?
The site, like an errant site, something that shouldn't be in the TOA. I didn't see that.
Let me see here. Let's go back, and we're going to start from the beginning. Okay. So if there was something that you didn't want to include, say it was this one, you can put a quotation mark around it. And then when we rescan this, it will show up as suppressed. Or you can right click on an item and you can suppress it this way.
And that'll keep it out of the table.
Yep.
Right?
Or you could select it like this and you can suppress it up here. There's always like 10 ways to do the same thing, right? Like, okay. So there's right click from this menu over here. There's right click within the document itself, and then there's the buttons up at the top. But yeah, simply clicking suppress as you have it highlighted will suppress it, and then it will keep it out.
And if we wanted to, thank you, that answers that question. And if we wanted to update a case name, we didn't want to update the document. We didn't want to change the document itself in any way. We just wanted to change the appearance in the TOA. Could you show me that?
So what you're going to do is you're going to select the citation. I don't want that last period. There we go. Okay, so I have the whole thing selected. And then I'm going to come up here to mark as a long. And anything that I modify in here will be reflected into the table of authorities. So let's auto format. And then maybe I only wanted it to include, like, I know this wouldn't be how it is, right? But I just wanted it to be that, right? So then I click OK. Now, it leaves it in the document, but all that's going to show up in the TOA now is D'Amico versus Board of Medical Examiners. That's it. So that's just an example of how you can really make this look how you wanted to. Yeah. Using the mark button is probably one of the most used pieces of functionality. And you can mark it as short as well. But this is very, very helpful in really crafting the table of authorities in the way that you want it. And then if you wanted to associate it to a different group, say like, even though this is a case, but you wanted it under some like court, whatever. And you can make, if you're an administrator can make their own groups. So if there was something that didn't fit into, cases, constitution, statutes, other, you could have whatever group you want, and then you can say, well, I want this particular citation to be in this group. You can do it all through here.
Okay. And just one last question from me. At the top of the toolbar, I see some icons that I'm not familiar with. Edit one authority, unmark one citation, edit one citation. What are those? So
if I have this selected, oops, I didn't want that period, like this, and I wanted to just unmark it, I could unmark it and say, this is not a citation. And see, it's gray. This is essentially, it's essentially being suppressed, but it's just unmarked. It's just saying, just ignore me.
Okay.
Of course, I could remark it, and let it say, hey, actually, this is long. I was incorrect. Now it's fine.
Okay.
I could have the same content selected. And I could say, I want to edit this authority. And it looks, that's not what I was looking for here. I have to select it like this, edit authority. What's this doing? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. This is what I was looking for. Okay, so if I wanted to edit the citation, I could tell it, what the value was for the selected citation. This is a poor example right here. Here, maybe this guy. So you could say like, enter the text to precede the page number, enter the text to follow the page number, which would be included in here, like 904, 911, if you needed to make a change to it. You can assign it to a specific authority. So if you needed to say that, well, this Hindley versus Lally is actually a part or assigned to, something else that, and none of these are actually linked to it. So I could say, it's California Code of Civil Procedures. Okay, now they're linked. These are typically not as necessary as something as, mark as a citation or unmark a citation or edit the authority itself. But it gives you the ability to, you can also merge authorities or split authorities if they're already combined. So you could split them into two. That's a whole nother set of training to start going down that road. That's like Best Authority 102 class. But there's lots of different pieces of functionality in here. And then if there's something that's not showing up and you wanted it to show up as a citation, that's when you would really leverage mark. You say like this and be like, I want to mark this as a authority, even though it doesn't match. And maybe I could just type in what that authority needed to be for it to be, respected as a citation. But really, what you're going to do is you're going to find the items that are already highlighted, select it, and make your change using either edit or mark or via right click, and then decide if you wanted to suppress it or whatever your functionality should be.
I actually have one more question. Sorry, I know I said the last one was my last.
No, you're good.
Sometimes we work with co-counsel and they'll, certainly not have Litera. Some inevitably one of them will not have Litera.
Yeah.
How do we strip the Litera codes and just leave the word codes for the TOA?
Well, Litera only uses word codes, so there's really no need to do any of that. Nothing in here is like proprietary. So when we see this in here, this should actually be typed text except for the links itself. But if I toggle my field codes here, when it inserts the table of authorities, it's not inserted as a field like how a table of contents is. Like if I toggle these guys here, where's my toggle? Here it is. Okay, so there's my TOC code. But table of authorities, it's flat text. It's not a field code.
But in the body of the document, it
oh
yeah.
It still
so if we're going to, like, if we're going to prepare a document for our co-counsel or our local counsel even and send this to them, we want them to be able to edit it. So we want it to convert to the standard Word format.
Yeah, and it's always going to be in that standard Word. Like, I mean, these aren't even field codes. These are just, all that we do is we recognize and present via formatting. That's why when we found this guy down here that had those words in between it, it was breaking the citation into essentially two separate ones, and then we went into that dialog box and removed the was that Hunter versus Pacific? No, that wasn't that one. Which one was it? This one I made a change in Word. See how I've got the little W next to it? This shows that I made a change within Word itself. Gosh, what was that problem that we fixed? I don't remember.
I guess I want to make sure like someone in another firm could edit the document, could edit the TOA.
Well, I mean, they would if they came to this and they saw that the TOA was like this, they would have to actually make a change, you know, within the document itself. Like this reviewing of the document is really the only place that you'll be able to make modifications to the TOA that we then reinsert, because that's why we have startup, scan, review, and build, right? The TOA doesn't actually get put until we build it. Once it's built and it's in there, then it's in there. If you need to come back and make modifications to it, then you would need to remove the existing one. And if they didn't have best authority, they would have to do it just through table of authorities like this.
So we've been shown in other demos how to convert it to Microsoft Word field codes. And I'm sure I have it in my notes from way back when. I just don't have them handy now. And then you can't undo.
Oh, we can convert them to Word fields down here under tools.
Okay, this
is typically something that we would get like into the weeds with in Best Authority 102.
Okay.
But yeah,
that's fair enough.
And I only do 101. So I can give lots of different trainings on lots of different products, but for Best Authority 102 and 202, we actually have somebody from a law firm come in, you know, that understands litigation documents a lot more than me.
Understood.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Because this piece of software, it really is reliant on you understanding how like pleadings are put together and how table of authorities are done, even in Word. And admittedly, I've never worked in a law firm, so I've worked with Litera for 10 years, but you know, I don't really understand the use cases for the actual modification of a TOA at a granular level like that.
Fair enough. If you guys, thanks for finding it.
Yeah, for sure.
I can take it from there.
If you want to do a Best Authority 102 or
yes.
Heaven forbid 202, if you wanted to get into the administrator side of things, I can speak to the customer success manager that handles your firm and get that set up for you.
All right, great.
Cool. Any other questions?
That's it for me, Tom.
The only quick question I would ask, and I can circle back with Brett after I speak to Donna maybe, is I gave her that single install, which kind of gave her a different look and feel than what you have right now. Should I just give her both, or give any future installs? Should I make those the two separate installs so they get the tabs, they get all the buttons?
Honestly, I think the single install is better. I last minute I did this because I looked at your download records and saw that it was just Litigation Companion. And I thought, oh gosh, maybe I should just install that. But
that's my fault. I didn't install the single install. I didn't even download it until today, so I'm sorry about that.
No problem. It's my fault too. I should have been more clear when we were talking about it earlier on. But okay. I know, you know, this has gotten installed pretty quickly. You know, we didn't have too many meetings or anything like that. We didn't go over any sort of environment stuff. So
okay,
we're off into the races with this one. But regardless of the ribbon that is exposed, the functionality is going to be the same. So I personally would recommend doing just the Litera check piece, because come upgrade time, it's just going to be that much easier. It's just one MSI and you just push it out as opposed to just juggling the two. But you know, either way will work.
Okay, great.